morning. My name is Tiffany Clark. I'm the Sacramento attorney who helped defeat Measure C because it was unfair to the smallest of small businesses. Here, sounding the alarm again with other impacted members of my family, about two new city proposals that would also be unfair to the smallest businesses. I'm talking about two proposed dramatic and inequitable fee hikes targeting home businesses or home occupations. One of these fees would go to over $5,200 when over 43% of U.S. home businesses make $10,000 or less in annual gross receipts. Home businesses are more likely than other small businesses to be run and owned by women, racial and ethnic minorities, and members of other historically disadvantaged groups, which in turn makes them less likely to succeed at obtaining outside business financing. On top of that, home businesses in this city are grappling with unusually and inexplicably burdensome home occupation regulations. And while reform is promised by the 2040 general plan, the commitment is to merely evaluate potential reform options by as late as 2029. And in the meanwhile, with these two fee increases, ask folks to pay up to over $5,200 to request exceptions to the rules that the city already acknowledges are broken while they await pending reform. For all of these reasons, we urge residents to call on their council members to reject the two fee increases and instead front load the needed reforms. What are these reforms? What's the problem with the current home occupation regulations? Most cities regulate home businesses that could cause nuisances. We're talking about traditional brick and mortar businesses that are essentially run from home. So back when these regulations were first enacted, that was what we were talking about. So there are limits set on how many visitors come to and fro the business. Commercial vehicles, things like that, things that would cause a disruption to normal and usual residential activity. So there are limits saying you can have only X amount of visitors, one commercial vehicle, that sort of thing, to make sure that all together, all of the dwellings, home businesses are indiscernible, as they say, from normal and usual residential activity, which is great. We all want that. And the city of Sacramento has those regulations. Unfortunately, on top of that, the city of Sacramento takes it to a whole other level and regulates businesses that are very, very common now, since the COVID-19 pandemic especially, that have, by definition, no discernible impacts. In fact, they reduce impacts on the neighborhood because they generate often less traffic than a single commuting adult would. So people are conducting all customer-client interactions online, by phone, by Zoom. There are no commercial vehicles whatsoever involved. So there's not even a need to apply those limits of a number of visitors and commercial vehicles and such to those businesses. There's really not even a need to regulate them. And in most cities, they are not regulated. But in Sacramento, we regulate them. What does that mean? We require they pay currently a $154 home occupation permit, which will be going up over 50% to $234, which is pretty steep when so many businesses make under $10,000. And then on top of that, and this is the crux of the problem, there are a series of extremely unusual, completely unnecessary regulations that apply to these businesses and all businesses, home businesses, that are things like you can have only only two per dwelling, no matter how indiscernible they are. Only two, only 3 involved residents, using at most one of the families or the households otherwise permitted ordinary household vehicles. We're talking about even occasional use. You can only use one, no backup vehicle for you. And 10% of the home's square footage, regardless of the size of the dwelling, which, by the way, is particularly burdensome for larger, often minority, low-income households who tend to live in smaller dwellings with more people. On top of that, even now, the fee for requesting exceptions to those onerous and unusual regulations is thousands of dollars, which is completely out of reach for most home businesses. So, and then that would go up to over $5,200. So how does this play out in real life? Well, I have a couple of hypotheticals and then a couple of real examples. Hypothetical number one, married couple, let's, in this case, husband, wife. Husband already has a home office business. Everything's done by Zoom, makes no impact on the neighborhood whatsoever, reduces impact, hardly drives, but occasionally uses one of the household's ordinary vehicles. Wife wants to do the same using the other ordinary household vehicle. They can't. They don't even have the opportunity to pay for the permit and do it. They can't. What are their options? What should they do? Should they fork over $5,200 now, wait 4 to 6 months, and endure a public hearing for the chance at being able to do that? Should she maybe lie on her home occupation permit application and hope they don't get caught using the two vehicles? Should she just not apply at all, maybe just operate under the radar and not be able to get a home business license or a business license, and so not be able to open a business bank account, so not be able to have her clients pay her in her business's name, and not be able to segregate personal and business finances the way tax authorities require? Not such a good option. Maybe they should just wait until 2029. Or maybe they should go their separate ways. Move out, have separate lives. None of these are tenable options. Second hypothetical, same situation, somehow the couple manages to get their home occupations. Now their adult daughter wants to start a work from home office business. Maybe she wants to be an independent contractor working from home. Maybe she wants to do some administrative gig work. Maybe she wants to get a little desk side hustle going. All of those things would require a home occupation permit. She can't do any of them. She's stuck with the same problems that the prior hypothetical. But on top of that, for young people, there are 3 additional concerns. Number one, big life decisions are being made during just a few year period of time. And they can't wait. They can't wait till 2029 or 4 to 6 months or anything. Second problem, how many 18 to 20 somethings do you know that have an extra $5,200 to toss into the ring and gamble with? Not many. And then lastly, in this city where we are working so hard to cope with our housing crisis, do we want to disincentivize families from living together when they otherwise would and when housing's so expensive? At the same time that we are rezoning to allow accessory dwelling units to keep extended families together? It really doesn't make sense. That last hypothetical relates very much to my youngest adult son, who's dealing with just that situation, and he speak to it briefly. He wants, again, completely indiscernible computer programming, game development, home business. Would have no outside traffic, no discernible effects whatsoever, but he's stuck. He may have permanently be giving up on that dream. And my husband, who years ago decided to not register his indiscernible consulting business as a home occupation, suspecting rightly that perhaps some other family members might want to use that other home occupation slot. I have a home-based law practice, so that's one. The second one is being used by our son, who has a home studio. So he decided to hold back, not register. He was told by the city, no problem, rent a virtual office. Have another business address, it's not your home address, no problem. Almost $15,000 in virtual office rent later, he would really like to register his business as an ordinary home occupation without throwing yet another chunk of money, perhaps up to over $5,200, at the problem. Wait 4 to 6 plus more months and do a public hearing for the chance at seeing that to fruition. So with that, I want to allow my youngest son to speak first because he needs to leave to a final, and then the other two, and we can take some questions as well. I think that's pretty much it.
Do I need to raise this up?
Oh, does that? Yes.
Actually, it'll
And by the way, he's
Right.
6'8".
Yeah.
It's fine. Just
Yeah. Do I have to spell out my name again?
Yeah, let's have you.
Okay. My name is Elliot Clark, ELLIOTCLARK. Good morning. My name is Elliot Clark, the youngest son of Tiffany Clark, and I've been wanting to have my own game development business since I was 13 years old. At that time, I created my first video game, which now has over 15,000 downloads, and I would have chosen to monetize that game and turn it into a business if I was able to, but I was not and am still not able to, since we already have a maximum of 2 home businesses. This maximum of 2 home businesses rule has been around for decades and was around before businesses like mine could even exist, computer-based businesses. And presumably it was made with the assumption that home businesses by necessity would make some kind of disruption on the neighborhood, which means that if by regulating the number of businesses, the maximum of 2 rule, that they were therefore regulating the disruption on the neighborhood, which kind of makes sense, except you could have just regulated the disruption on the neighborhood factors themselves instead of just the number of businesses. And by implementing it the way they did, they've effectively made a business like mine where no impact whatsoever, but it's over the 2 maximum, impossible to create. And because of these outdated rules, I can't go ahead with my business, even though it makes 0 disruption on the neighborhood. Working on my own computer, collaborating with people online, I probably make less disruption than anyone working a normal job. I probably make more disruption now as a college student going to and from college than I would as a game developer just working from home. So, what are my options if I want to create this business? Well, I could A, break the law. I could B, leave my, move out and, be somewhere else so that we're not breaching the 2 maximum home businesses, which of course is pretty hard since I don't have the funds to do that because I can't create my business. Or C, I could pay the exception fee, which is right now thousands of dollars, and it's about to be increased by over $1,000 to a total fee of over $5,200, and then wait up to 6 months, and then endure a public hearing where I could be rejected, and then the money just goes away. And so, needless to say, all of these options are terrible, and I don't want to choose any of them. I mean, part of the reason why I can't pursue this business opportunity right now. Part of the reason why I'm going to college is because I can't create my own game development business, so my option is kind of to work for some other game development business. So I'm getting my degree in order to do that. But I would love to pursue my dream, but I can't do that because of the maximum of 2 home businesses rule, which is a horribly outdated rule. And I can't apply for an exception, especially since these exception rates, well, I can, but the fee is ridiculous and being increased. So I ask residents of Sacramento to please contact your council members and request that these fees do not be increased even further, making it even harder for people like me to ask for an exception to these rules, these ridiculous rules that they themselves think need reform. And please ask your council members for the long term to prioritize reform of these rules, which currently they only plan to consider reforming by as late as 2029, which is way too late. And yeah, thank you. Anyone else?
I gotta go.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
We're going to try to use something that you said already.
Who wants to go next?
Patrick, why don't you?
Okay.
Hi, Patrick Clark, PATRICKCLARK, and I've been running a business since 2010. My business is a consulting practice where I basically do everything from my computer and or at the client's place of work. I don't have any traffic, no visitors in 14 years to the home. I have what's called a virtual office that receives my mail and that I could use for meetings with clients and so forth. That was the original intent when I got the virtual office, at some expense, I might add. And in 14 years, I have not once had to have a client visit my place of business. And so my desire for some time now has been to just convert to a home virtual office, but we are precluded from doing that because we already have 2 at our house, and so my options are to spend $50, $200 for the chance of, enduring a public hearing, etc., for the chance of being allowed to continue my business, but that is just not tenable, really. I've been continuing with the virtual office, and that is an ongoing expense that's totaling over $14,000, coming up on $15,000 at this point. And to throw another $50, $200 in for the chance and perhaps be rejected of continuing my business from home is just not really a viable option. So I too am calling upon Sacramento residents to contact their council members and request that the city not, 1, increase these fees further, and 2, take immediate action on the home occupation permit rules, and ideally eliminate the cap for no impact businesses.
All right.
Last but not least.
I'm Keegan Clark, that's spelled Keegan-Clark. I am the eldest son of Tiffany Clark, and I registered my business after her, of course. And I am the reason that my father and my brother cannot register home occupations. And because of that, I'll talk about my home occupation. I am a independent musician, and I work entirely on my computer. None of it impacts the neighborhood. I don't play loud noises. I just, I use my headphones and everything. I collaborate remotely with other musicians online. I don't go out for much of anything. I'm mostly a recluse in my home, and it's really indiscernible from, I could literally be anywhere doing this and it doesn't impact the neighborhood at all. I just feel like my father and my brother could easily register home occupations here if they were allowed to, with no negative effect on the neighborhood whatsoever. And because of that, I implore residents to contact their council members and ask for reform of these issues. Thank you.
So from hearing, this is all new, guys. It's a learning lesson every day.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's why this job's awesome.
Yeah.
So if you have more than 2 home occupied businesses, or if you want to have more than 2,
Right.
you have to apply, pay
For an
these
exception.
For an exception,
Yes.
$200, and then we're hearing saying,
Well,
you
actually,
can or you're not, depending on your business.
well, you have to apply for an exception, which right now costs thousands of dollars. I've gotten different quotes between $3,800, I think, and $4,800. Right now, you have to pay that first. If you go through the 4 to 6 plus months, you have the public hearing and they grant the exception, then you get to pay $154 for your home occupation permit. And soon that would be $234.
So these thousands of dollars that you have to pay up front, is this something that's relatively new, that's being instituted now?
This is something that applying for exceptions is something that is allowed in other cities. That part isn't the unusual part. The unusual part is the nature of the rules themselves. And so they require people to apply for exceptions in situations where most cities wouldn't even ask the home business to register, wouldn't even ask them to pay for a home occupation permit, because these are businesses that by definition have no neighborhood impacts. They're home office businesses. They're basically work from home, remote work from home situations, like are so common now. Like everybody has now. So many people have now. They work from home, they're on Zoom, whatnot. So the unusual part is saying even for those businesses, we're going to say you can only have 2. The trouble is, 0 effects times any number is still 0 effects. So it doesn't matter if you had 100 of those businesses, or you wouldn't have 100 residents. But if everybody who's otherwise allowed to live in a home had 2 or 3 of those businesses, it would make no difference whatsoever to the neighborhood. In fact, it would reduce neighborhood impact. It would benefit neighborhoods. You keep people at home more in the day, creates neighborhood safety. There's less commuter traffic, because all those folks, the people who are living in the home are all just pretty much at home. They're communicating with clients and customers online and so on.
Why do you believe they're insisting on these fees on these types of non-impacted businesses?
Well, as my son alluded to, as Elliot alluded to, these rules were created decades ago, when there was probably an assumption in the city that, okay, well, every business is going to be a brick and mortar business. And so every business, if it's at home, is going to have customers and deliveries and, employees coming to and fro, and we've got to set limits on that. And that is wonderful. That's fine. But now, when many home businesses have the opposite, are the opposite. They reduce neighborhood impact because nobody's even commuting. These efforts are outdated, and truly they were never necessary. All that was needed all along was to regulate the effects. So you have, say, only X number of visitors, employees, customers, clients can come to the home a day. And we have those rules, and most cities have those rules, and that's all we need. That's all we need. For non-impact businesses, most cities wouldn't even ask for a home occupation permit, and they certainly, if they did, would just apply those effects rules, which would make no difference because these are businesses that definitionally have no impact. They would not, on top of that, say, oh, and by the way, you can only have 2 of them, and only 3 people who live there can be involved, and only 1 ordinary household vehicle can be used, and only 10% of the home square footage. What difference does that make to the outside world? And there's... Yeah, go ahead.
It's not until 2029 that they're looking at, and that's the closest they're...
The 2040 general plan commits the city to merely evaluate potential reform options by as late as 2029. And I've spoken with various folks with the city, and I've been told it's not going to happen this year. It's probably not going to happen next year. They might start to evaluate in 2026, but no promises. It can happen as late as 2029, and then who knows how long after that till we actually get reforms. No promises.
Yeah, that was my next question, is what's been their response to...
Well, I spoke at a couple of meetings last week, and I have a handout. Oh, I forgot to give it to the Fox reporter. I spoke at a couple of council meetings last week, and I'm going to speak today and tonight. There's a meeting 2 p.m. and a one at 5 p.m. And so far, I just haven't received comment. There are a number of other contentious fee hikes and changes in the proposed budget, and so that's been getting a lot of attention. I don't know what the opinion is yet, and I'm just going to continue to push this until I at least hear something reassuring, at least about not putting forth these proposed fee hikes while we await pending reform, and at best, let's front load the reform. There are simple things that could be done in the short term that while we await more complex reform down the line, maybe. I would like to hear the city commit to that, and at the very least, not raise these fee hikes, not hike the fees even more while we await this reform.
And just to be clear, you You said proposed, you said new. So there's fees in existence that you would have to pay, yet they're looking to raise them.
Raise them. So the exceptions fee would go up over $1,000. Right now, I've been quoted anywhere between $3,800 and $4,800, depending on who I talk to with the city. Right now, they're saying that it's like $37-something hundred to apply for an exception, and they're saying it would go up to $5,264, I think it is. And the handout provides more information on that. And then right now, if you get an exception and you get to have a home occupation, you get to pay $154 for a home occupation permit. That would go up to $234 under the fee hikes.
Now that permit, if you granted it, how long is it good for?
That one is you're set. You're set until you like move. You know, it's non-transferable. There are some limitations, but like
Pay an annual.
you also pay an annual business operations tax. That was the subject of Measure C, but this is called a home occupation permit. This you pay right at the start, just to allow you to start your business. It's a one-time thing.
Okay. Anything else that you have?
Just one comment I would make, which Patrick Clark again. I'm a management consultant, and I work with a lot of cities and counties and special districts in the state of California. And I find it ironic that the city is trying, with economic development and so forth, to stimulate businesses, and yet they're regulating the number of businesses in order.
Have no impact.
Well, they're regulating the number of businesses arbitrarily when the thing that they should be regulating is the thing that other cities are the effects, the traffic, the number of deliveries, and so forth. It serves no purpose, and in fact, I would say it's disadvantageous to the city and its annual revenue to limit the number of businesses. I think that part's just got to go. It can't wait till 2029.
Does the fee, is it on a scale based on how much gross revenue the business does?
No. And given that over 43% of U.S. home businesses make $10,000 or less, that's a problem too. The fee is the fee for asking for exceptions, especially, is flat and actually can get higher because that's the base fee. That's what they call the base fee, as I understand it, as what I've been told. Even the $5,264 is a base fee, so that can go up depending on if you need this level of review or that or whatnot, whatever extra costs they tack on.
So just to wrap it up, the $5,200 is the fees for asking for an exception, going through the process of 4 to 6 months, and
Right.
wait, and includes the new permit.
No, then once the exception is granted, then you are allowed to pay for the home occupation permit, which then is an additional $154 now, going to $234 if the proposed fee hikes are approved.
And again, what can the public do?
Please.
Other small
Yes.
business owners, what do you?
Yes, I'm urging, we are all imploring, as my oldest son said, imploring residents to do what they did with Measure C. Please stand for equity, fairness, and stand with the smallest of small businesses by calling on your council member, calling the mayor, calling your council member, asking them to please reject these proposed dramatic and inequitable fee hikes and request immediate effort at reform, preferably this year, of the burdensome, unusual home occupation regulations.
That should do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In